I got a call from my husband, Lucas, in the middle of the night while I was on a business trip overseas. His words hit me like a truck. "Hey, I want a divorce." I froze.
What?
I managed to say. Deep down, I had always feared this day might come, but I never thought he'd bring it up while I was so far away. "What do you mean? Can you explain this properly?" I asked, my voice shaking. Lucas let out a bitter laugh. "You probably haven't noticed, but I have a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together. So, I want you to divorce me so I can be with them." I was silent. He went on, as if trying to drive his point home. "I've already sold the house and car." He paused, clearly waiting for me to react. I took a deep breath and gave him a short, calm reply. "Okay." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Huh," Lucas muttered, clearly confused. Maybe he thought I'd start crying or begging him to stay. But I didn't. I had been preparing myself for this possibility for a long time. His words didn't shake me like he probably expected. A few days later, when I got back home, Lucas was at the airport waiting for me, looking frantic. But let me tell you a bit about myself before we get to that. My name is Jenna. I'm 35 years old and a housewife. I grew up in a regular, middle-class family. Ever since I was a kid, I loved learning Italian and started taking classes in elementary school. By middle school, I had a talent for English too, and during high school, I even got to stay with a host family in Italy. That's when I started dreaming of working for an international company. To make that dream come true, I got into the business program at a top university. During my time there, I studied abroad in Italy and worked hard toward my goals. Job hunting wasn't easy, but I was thrilled when I landed a position at my second-choice international company. My family was so proud, and my sister even said, "Jenna, you're amazing. We're so proud of you. Take care and do your best." Their support meant everything to me. Starting my new job was tough. The work was more demanding than I expected, and even though the company treated its employees well, the standards were incredibly high. In my early 20s, with little experience, I often had to work long hours. But my coworkers and supervisors were supportive, and most importantly, I found joy in doing the job I had always dreamed of. After working hard for several years, my efforts were finally noticed. I started getting more important tasks, and my friends often said things like, "You're on your way to becoming a successful businesswoman," or "You're so cool, such a strong woman." But despite how people saw me, I had a soft spot for cute things. I loved collecting items of my favorite characters, and even slept with stuffed animals. I wanted a pet, but my busy job made it impossible, so on my days off, I'd go to cat cafes to relax. At work, I kept a professional and sharp image, never showing the softer side of me. Maybe it was because I was so busy that I craved comfort in those little things. As I got older, many of my friends started getting married and having kids. At weddings, people would tell me, "You should get married soon too." I'd laugh it off and say, "I'm too busy with work." The truth was, I didn't feel romantic toward anyone at work or among my business contacts, and I didn't have time to meet new people. I wondered if I was meant to stay single forever. Back then, I thought that was okay. I liked focusing on my career, and it didn't seem like a bad way to live. Then one day, I went to yet another friend's wedding. I applauded the couple as usual, but this time, I felt a bit uneasy. I was already past 30. If I wanted to get married, I needed to start looking for someone soon. The reception moved to a bar later that evening, and I found myself sitting alone at the counter with a drink. I watched the other guests laughing and the bride and groom smiling shyly. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. "Are you alone? Can I sit here?" The voice was smooth and pleasant, and it caught me off guard. "Oh, sure," I said, turning to look at the man. He was about my height, tall for a woman, and seemed younger than me. His face was average in a good way, not quite what I expected from his lovely voice. "Are you here for the wedding?" he asked. "Yes, I'm a friend of the bride," I replied. "I'm a high school friend of the groom. Want to have a drink together?" I nodded, and we started talking over drinks. "Wow, you work at that international company?" "I've heard about it." "That's amazing." To someone like me, just a salaryman at a small company, you feel like you're from a different world. the man said. He introduced himself as Lucas, and I found him easy to talk to. Before we parted, we exchanged contact information and started meeting up after that. Lucas was 3 years younger than me and worked in sales at a small company. He had a gentle and calm personality, was a great listener, and knew how to give genuine compliments. I enjoyed spending time with him. After a few dates, Lucas confessed his feelings for me, and I happily said yes. Even though his yearly income was less than a third of mine, it didn't bother me at all back then. The more time we spent together, the more I found Lucas adorable. I didn't see him as super cool or dependable, and maybe that was why I never felt disappointed in him. Instead, I liked his cute and earnest nature. When he said things like, "I'd love to try your cooking," I couldn't resist and happily cooked for him. After dating for about a year and a half, Lucas surprised me with a ring. "I love how you're always so cool, but you have this cute side too. If you're okay with it, will you marry me?" he asked. I was caught off guard but thrilled. I accepted the ring with a smile. "Thank you, Lucas. Let's take care of each other as husband and wife." Lucas was over the moon, practically jumping for joy, and his happiness made me laugh. Afterward, we met each other's families to share the news. Lucas's parents were kind and simple people who happily blessed our marriage. My family was supportive as well, with my parents telling him, "Please take good care of our daughter." My sister, who is already married, quietly teased me, saying, "He seems like just the type you'd choose, knowing your soft spot for cute things. But don't spoil him too much, okay?" I laughed and replied, I know. And just like that, life with Lucas began. Since we were starting fresh, I decided to buy a condo. It was a big decision, but I thought it would be a good investment for the future. I chose a slightly bigger place, thinking ahead in case we had kids. I believed our happy married life was about to begin. But reality hit me hard. Lucas didn't know how to do any housework. He had lived with his parents until our marriage and had always relied on his mom for everything. I tried to be patient and said, "Lucas, now that we're married, we should share the housework. If you don't know how, I can teach you." But Lucas frowned and said, "What? Now that we're married, isn't it your job to handle the housework?" I looked at him and replied firmly, "No, Lucas. Housework is something we share." "No. I have a busy job. It'll be a problem if you can't even handle housework," I said firmly. "Come on, get up. I'll teach you how to use the washing machine." I spent time teaching Lucas the basics of housework, even though he wasn't interested. At first, Lucas started doing some cleaning and laundry, but his efforts were always half-hearted. I had to redo most of what he did. As for cooking, it was a disaster, so I handled it by preparing meals ahead of time. I didn't want to discourage him, so I made an effort to praise him, even for the little he did. I thought encouragement might help. But instead of improving, Lucas began doing less and less. He knew I'd pick up the slack, so he started taking advantage of my patience. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Lucas, you need to stop relying on me so much. Learn to do housework properly. I'm busy with work and have business trips. You need to take care of things too." Lucas frowned and said, "What's with you? You've changed since we got married. You're always nagging. You make good money, so if you're going to complain so much, why not just hire someone to do the housework?" I was stunned. Yes, I earned a decent income, but spending money carelessly would drain our savings. Despite talking to him about it multiple times, Lucas refused to change. Then, about a year after we got married, I came home to find Lucas sitting pale-faced in the living room. "Lucas, what's wrong? You don't look good," I asked. He sighed and admitted, "My company is going bankrupt because of the recession. I'll be out of a job next month." "What?" I was shocked. Although Lucas had been working overtime more often lately, I had no idea his company was in such bad shape. "So, what are you going to do? Have you started looking for a new job?" "I'll think about it later," he replied. "I'm tired and stressed. I just need some time." I decided to give him space, thinking he needed time to process everything. But after his company shut down and he no longer had work, Lucas spent all day playing video games. He didn't do any housework, and when I came home late, I'd find him sitting in front of the TV, completely absorbed in his games. This went on for months. My patience wore thin, and one day, I finally said, "Lucas, haven't you rested enough? Don't you think it's time to start working again?" Lucas didn't even look up. "I want to think carefully about my next job," he said. At my old job, I was just being used. Next time, I want a job where I can achieve something meaningful, like self-realization or whatever. Even though I wanted to say, "What nonsense," I knew I couldn't force Lucas to work. So, even after his unemployment benefits ran out, I kept supporting him. One day, as he was glued to his video games, I sarcastically said, "If you like games so much, why not try streaming? You might even make some pocket money." To my surprise, Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. You're so smart, Jenna. I'll give it a shot. I have a good feeling about this," he said, full of enthusiasm. For someone who had been doing nothing for months, it was a sudden change, and I wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. "Then you'll need a PC and streaming equipment," he added casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I blinked in shock. "What?" "I don't have any savings, but I'm serious about this," he explained. "So please buy it for me." Reluctantly, I bought everything he needed. Deep down, I thought this would fail, and he'd finally realize he needed to get a proper job. But a few months later, things took a surprising turn. Lucas became popular as a game streamer under the name Jay. To my shock, he even started ranking on charts. Fans online left positive comments like, "His voice is so nice," and "It's funny how bad he is at games." He managed to attract both men and women to his streams. He partially hid his face on camera and, of course, never mentioned that he was married. "See? I told you I could succeed when I tried. The world finally recognizes my talent," Lucas declared, full of himself. Despite his success, he didn't show a shred of gratitude for all the support I had given him or for buying the equipment that started it all. Still, I approached him calmly. "Lucas, I'm happy you're doing well. But don't you think you should contribute some of your earnings to our household expenses? It's been a while since your unemployment benefits ended, and I've been covering everything." Lucas looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Why should I? You make enough to handle the living expenses. Let's just keep our finances separate." I was stunned. True to his words, Lucas kept all his streaming income to himself. By now, the kind and considerate man I had dated was long gone. He had become completely selfish and dependent on me. Around that time, I bought a car on loan, a luxury car I had always dreamed of owning. I only drove it on weekends, but I cherished it like a treasure. One day, Lucas casually said, "Hey, let me drive your car." I raised an eyebrow. "You work from home. You don't need a car for streaming. Why would you need to drive it?" "We're married, so it's fine." "Come on, let me," he insisted. Eventually, I gave in and handed him the keys, though it didn't sit right with me. After that, Lucas started going out whenever he wanted during weekdays while I was at work. His popularity as a streamer kept growing, and he gained a huge following. He also began living a flashy lifestyle, dressing in expensive designer clothes. I felt sad seeing how much he had changed. But since we were still married, I continued our life together, hoping things might get better. As we entered the 5th year of our marriage, my career was thriving. I was given more responsibilities at work and often had to travel overseas for business trips. Sometimes I'd be away for a few days, other times for up to 4 weeks. Each time I came home, the house was a complete mess, like a garbage dump. Lucas spent all his time locked in his room, streaming. He still depended on me for everything and never helped out around the house. We barely talked anymore, and I found myself wondering, why am I still married to him? That's when I started collecting evidence for a divorce and making plans to move on. One day, I told Lucas, "I'll be going overseas again tomorrow for a 3-week business trip. Take care." He didn't even look up from his phone. I sighed, left for my trip, and threw myself into my work. On the 11th night of my trip, I got a call from Lucas. "Hello, Lucas? Do you know what time it is here?" "It's midnight," I said, half asleep. Then he dropped a bomb. "Hey, Jenna, I want a divorce." I froze. "What?" I managed to say. I had suspected this might happen one day, but I never thought he'd bring it up while I was halfway across the world. What do you mean? Can you explain properly? I asked, trying to stay calm. Lucas chuckled. You probably haven't noticed, but I have a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together. I didn't say anything, so he kept going. I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our child. Oh, and I've already sold the house and car. He sounded so confident, like he expected me to crumble. But I didn't. I simply said, okay. What? Lucas stammered. He must have thought I'd cry or beg him to stay. He had no idea I had been mentally preparing for this moment for a long time. You want a divorce, right? Fine, I said calmly. There's a completed divorce paper in the living room drawer. You can sign it and submit it yourself. Lucas was taken aback. You had divorce papers ready? Well, thanks for making it easy. Goodbye then. Enjoy being the woman your husband left behind. I held back a laugh. Sure. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Goodbye, Lucas. Then I hung up and immediately blocked his number. I called my sister and asked her for a favor, then went to bed and slept peacefully until morning. The next day, I focused on my work and stayed busy until my trip was over. Finally, it was time to go home. The business class seat provided by my company was so comfortable that I fell asleep during the flight. When I woke up, I stretched and thought that was a good nap. No jet lag for me this time. I'm ready to get back to normal life. After landing, I collected my luggage and headed toward the airport lobby. As I reached the exit, I suddenly heard someone shouting, "Hey, Jenna." I turned to see Lucas running toward me, looking panicked. Oh, why are you here? I asked, surprised. I don't remember asking for a ride. Lucas didn't answer directly. Instead, he started ranting, his words spilling out in a rush. What have you done? The car. The house. Because of you, I stepped back, startled by his strange behavior. I don't understand what you're talking about, I said calmly. Can I go now? I'm tired. I yawned and tried to walk past him, but he blocked my way. Wait a minute. Listen to me, he shouted, so I stopped and crossed my arms, waiting for him to explain. First, I submitted the divorce papers after you told me to, he began. I see, I replied casually, scrolling through my phone and barely paying attention. Are you even listening? Lucas snapped. When I went home to meet with the real estate agent about selling the house, there was a lock on the door. I couldn't get in. Then, when I tried to use the car, there was an anti-theft lock on the tires, and I couldn't drive it. I tried calling you, but you didn't answer. You blocked my number. I let out a small sigh. Yes, I blocked your calls. And what about it? Lucas's face turned red with anger. Did you put the lock on the house and the tire locks on the car? How did you even do that when you were overseas? I shrugged. I asked my sister to handle it. His eyes widened in shock. Your sister? Yes, I said, keeping my tone light. You said you sold the house and car, remember? But when my sister checked, both were still there. So, I guess you were just bluffing. You were probably only getting estimates from agents, right? Lucas's face turned even redder, and he stammered. Well, yeah, that's true. But I was about to sell them. I couldn't help but sigh as Lucas continued ranting. No, Lucas, you couldn't have sold the house or car even if you tried. Both are in my name, and all the important documents needed to sell them are at my parents' house. Lucas froze, his face blank. What? He muttered. Did you really think anyone could just sell a house or car by saying, I'm selling this, without being the legal owner? Obviously, they'd need proof of ownership and the proper paperwork, right? I said, shaking my head. Lucas looked completely stunned, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You've always dumped all the complicated paperwork on me during our marriage, so of course, you don't even understand something this basic, I added with a hint of disgust. Lucas's face twisted in frustration. If you knew they couldn't be sold, why did you put locks on the house and the car? Because of you, I couldn't get into the house or use the car. It was awful. I sighed again. Why would I let someone who cheated, had a mistress, and demanded a divorce have free access to my house? Same with the car. They're in my name, so I just secured them for my own peace of mind. Lucas glared at me, his eyes bloodshot. What's with that attitude? I can't believe you're doing all this just because I couldn't sell your stupid property. You're so not cute. That's what I hated about you. Always acting like you can handle everything yourself. So arrogant for a woman. I stayed calm and replied, "Oh, really? Then why did you marry me in the first place?" Lucas snorted. "Obviously for your money. The fact that you worked at an international company and made good money, that was the only reason you were worth marrying." His words dripped with malice, but they didn't affect me. I just looked at him thoughtfully. Come to think of it, there wasn't much benefit in me marrying you either. Lucas's face turned red with anger. Don't act all high and mighty. I'm the one leaving you. My mistress is way better than you, hundreds of times cuter, and she even gave me a child. Doesn't that make you feel inferior? She's a better woman than you'll ever be. I couldn't help but smile faintly. Better than me, huh? What's so funny? Lucas snapped. Still smiling, I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo. Is this your mistress? I asked, showing him a picture of a young, attractive woman in her early 20s. Lucas's eyes darted nervously as he recognized her. You knew about Miriam? He stammered. I gave him a sweet smile. Of course. You're not the only one who wanted a divorce. I've been gathering evidence for a while now. You're so careless, Lucas. Didn't you realize the dashcam records the interior too? I said, watching his face go pale. But I didn't stop there. Once I saw when you were meeting her from the dashcam footage, it was easy. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. It didn't take long to identify your mistress. Lucas's face froze, and I added, I was a little surprised to find out she was already pregnant, though. He stood there, stunned, before finally blurting out, Don't do anything to her. She's been through a lot after giving birth, and she's young. She doesn't have money, and she didn't even know I was married. I raised an eyebrow, pretending to look concerned. Wow, you're really defending her. You must love Miriam a lot. Of course, I do, he said firmly. She's pure, sweet, and my soulmate. I'll protect her and our child no matter what. As Lucas puffed up with self-righteousness, I quietly took out my phone and played a video. It was dashcam footage from my car, showing Lucas driving with a heavily pregnant Miriam sitting in the passenger seat. Thanks for taking me on a drive today, Miriam said in a sugary voice. The food was delicious too. Lucas's face in the video lit up with pride. You're so good at saying thank you. What a good girl, he said smugly. I want to marry you soon. Miriam pouted, crossing her arms. Really? Then hurry up and divorce that old hag already. I want you to be my husband before the baby comes, okay? Lucas's voice in the video reassured her, just wait a little longer. I'll handle everything while she's on her overseas business trip. Then we'll be together, me, you, and the baby. We'll live comfortably with the money from selling the house and car. I paused the video and looked at Lucas. So, Miriam didn't know you were married, huh? She seems pretty aware to me. Lucas was pale and sweating. Before he could say anything, I dropped another bombshell. And about her being pure. You might want to take a closer look. What are you trying to say? He shouted. I took out a stack of photos and scattered them on the floor. Lucas's face grew paler with each picture he looked at. What is this? Who are these men? The photos showed Miriam with different men, holding hands, entering hotels, and even getting prenatal checkups with a man who wasn't Lucas. That's who Miriam really is, I said calmly. She targets popular streamers for relationships. Let me guess, you started out as a streamer, and she was just another fan, right? Lucas was frozen, unable to speak. He fell to his knees, clutching one of Miriam's photos, his face blank with shock. Looking at him pitifully, I said in a soft, almost sympathetic voice, You really are something else, Lucas. Planning to raise a child who might not even be yours, I said flatly, looking at Lucas. He muttered to himself like he was in a daze. No. Miriam told me I was the only one. This can't be true. I stared down at him without emotion. Can I leave now? We're basically strangers at this point. There's nothing left to discuss, is there? Suddenly, Lucas snapped out of his stupor and started yelling. If you hadn't shown me all this, I could have stayed happy. How cruel can you be? Because of you, I can't trust anything anymore. I couldn't help but sigh, feeling nothing but annoyance. That's not my problem, Lucas. Do you even hear yourself? Whatever. Do what you want. He sneered and said, Fine. Even if I divorce you and leave Miriam, I'll still be fine. I've got over 3 million followers as a streamer, and I'm earning way more than you now. Too bad for you. You're losing a famous streamer as a husband. Serves you right. At that, I smiled sweetly and said, Why don't you check your phone? Lucas froze for a second before pulling out his phone with a smug look. As he unlocked it, his face turned pale. What's this? Over 1,000 notifications? What's going on? He frantically scrolled through his screen, his expression growing more horrified by the second. Finally, he looked up at me, trembling. Jenna, you didn't. With the biggest smile of the day, I said, Oh, I did. I exposed everything online. How you were married, had a mistress and a love child, and how horribly you treated me. Lucas let out a scream that echoed through the airport lobby, causing people around us to stare. He completely lost it. What have you done to me? My reputation, my followers, my whole career is ruined. Look at these messages. They're calling me the worst man ever, saying I betrayed everyone. I casually held up my phone, tilting my head playfully. Oh, by the way, this whole scene is being live-streamed. Wow, look at that. Over 5 million viewers. They're loving it. Lucas's face twisted in panic, and he lunged for my phone. Give me that. But it was far too late. His ugly words and breakdown were already out there for everyone to see. As he collapsed onto the floor of the airport, rolling around in a fit of rage and despair, I calmly walked past him and headed toward the taxi stand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Afterward, Lucas faced intense backlash online. His entire career crumbled. His success had been built on the image of a sweet, clumsy, single man with a charming voice, a persona that attracted countless female fans. But now, that image was completely shattered. The fact that Lucas was secretly married shocked his female fans, who felt betrayed. But the scandal didn't stop there. News of his mistress and love child caused even his male fans to turn on him, calling him unfaithful. The story spiraled, packed with juicy details, hiding his marriage, cheating on his wife, and then finding out the child might not even be his. It became a hot topic online, drawing attention even from people who had never heard of Lucas before. He was the talk of the internet, for all the wrong reasons. Although Lucas posted a carefully worded apology on social media, the backlash didn't let up. His subscriber count plummeted, and eventually, he had no choice but to stop streaming altogether. Some time later, as I was leaving my office building after work, I saw Lucas waiting for me. His face was streaked with tears as he begged, Jenna, I can't stream anymore. I can't even go outside without people staring or mocking me. Please help me. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. Let's get back together and be husband and wife again. I looked at him coldly and said, If you keep stalking me, I'll call the police. That was the last time I saw Lucas. Later, I heard through the grapevine that the child Miriam had wasn't Lucas's after all. When the truth came out, it caused even more drama, and the two of them broke up. I didn't let either of them off the hook. I demanded compensation from both. Lucas used up the last of his savings to pay me, while Miriam had to borrow money from her parents to cover her share. As for Miriam, she tried to push the actual father of her child, another streamer, into marrying her, but he rejected her outright. With no other options, she returned to live with her strict parents and is now raising the child there. I genuinely hope the child grows up healthy and happy, despite everything. Lucas's situation only got worse. After paying me, he was left completely broke. The companies he had worked with demanded damages for harming their image, leaving him with nothing. When he turned to his family for help, his decent and responsible parents cut ties with him, ashamed of his behavior. Now, from what I've heard, Lucas lives alone in a rundown apartment, a shadow of the person he once was. Even knowing all this, I feel no sympathy for him. As for me, I've returned to my single life and am fully focused on my work. I couldn't bear to keep living in the condo I shared with Lucas, so I put it up for sale. It's a fresh start, and I feel lighter than ever. As it turned out, property values had gone up over the past few years, so I made a good profit when I sold the condo. I also sold the car that Lucas and Miriam had been using to an acquaintance. With that money, I bought myself a new car. Once everything had settled down, my sister, who had been such a big help, said to me, "Good job, Jenna. Just think of him like a dog that bit you, forget about him and move on. But next time, don't pick a man just because he's cute, okay?" She was right. This whole experience taught me an important lesson. I think I'm done with marriage. I've realized that living for my work suits me much better. Now, I'm living in a new place, a single unit in a tower apartment I recently bought. The best part? This apartment allows pets. Now that my work life has settled down, I plan to finally get the cat I've always dreamed of having. From here on out, I want to focus on the things I have, take care of myself, and live a positive and fulfilling life.